Greenland, one of the coldest, most remote, and least populated places in the world, is slowly losing its status as just a simple white part of the world map. And instead, it is now becoming one of the most contested territories in the field of geopolitics and military power. Did you know that President Donald Trump himself has openly expressed interest in Greenland several times? At first, many thought it was just a joke, but as time passed, the intention became clear, serious, and real. Few realize the United States has been interested in Greenland for almost 2 centuries. And this isn't just a simple idea of Trump. It's long been part of America's strategic perspective. In fact, with the United States repeatedly pushing, a deep rift is now opening in its relationship with Denmark, the country that legally holds Greenland. The conversation that began as a possible legal purchase has gradually turned into a more serious and tense discussion, with undertones of threat. But what exactly is the reason why Greenland is so attractive to the United States? Is it because of its strategic military location, the valuable minerals found there, or the melting ice that opens up new routes and opportunities for exploration? In this video, we will discuss the history of Greenland. We will examine why Donald Trump was determined to acquire this territory. What is Denmark's position? And what about the government of Greenland itself? And why does this conflict have the potential to change the global order? And could it possibly put the very existence of this order at risk? But before we start, if you're new to our channel, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. That's it. To better understand the current situation, we need to briefly revisit the past. Greenland is geographically in North America but has political and historical ties to Europe. The first inhabitants of the island were the Inuit, who arrived thousands of years ago and developed a culture capable of surviving in one of the harshest environments in the world. After many centuries, around the year 985, Norse explorers led by Eric the Red arrived and established colonies in the south. In 1261, the Norse colonies recognized the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Norway. When Norway and Denmark united under one crown, Greenland became part of their kingdom. After the Union dissolved in 1814, Greenland, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands stayed with Denmark. Since then, Greenland was governed as a colony of Denmark. It was a cold, remote, and almost uninhabitable place that for a long time was almost closed off from outside influence. Despite this, it did not escape the attention of an emerging power, the United States. In 1867, the year the United States purchased Alaska from Russia. At that time, Secretary of State William H. Seward, the mastermind behind America's territorial expansion, was seriously considering the possibility of buying Greenland and Iceland. For Washington, these 2 islands were considered as valuable as Alaska. Strategic positions in the North Atlantic that could serve as forward outposts, bridges to defend the American continent, and at the same time expand influence toward Europe. But unlike what happened in Alaska, the United States failed to buy Greenland. Denmark may have rejected any offer, and for many decades, America's interest remained alive. But Denmark's position did not change. Things only shifted when World War II began. When Nazi Germany occupied Denmark in 1940, Greenland was suddenly left without effective defense. The United States, officially neutral then, acted immediately. It invoked the Monroe Doctrine and used the threat that Germany could turn Greenland into a military base as a reason to act. In short, the United States occupied Greenland. It built weather stations, airfields, and military facilities, and gradually included the island in America's defensive perimeter in the North Atlantic. After World War II, Denmark expected to fully control Greenland again. However, gentlemen, what happened next showed the issue was never that simple. However, with the outbreak of the Cold War, the United States' interest in not only maintaining, but also expanding its presence in Greenland intensified even more. In the midst of the strategic rivalry against the Soviet Union, Greenland's location suddenly became extremely important, not just on the map, but also in terms of military and security. The island sits between the 2 superpowers, acting as a natural lookout over North America, Europe, and the Arctic. Controlling Greenland gave the United States a central position in the North Atlantic and a huge advantage when it comes to aerial surveillance, control of sea routes, and, most importantly, early detection of Soviet ballistic missiles that could come from the Arctic. From the local perspective, a large part of Greenland's political elite eventually accepted and even supported the American military presence. They thought it made sense for the United States to defend the island, especially during rising Cold War tensions. In exchange for remaining under America's security umbrella, Greenland received protection that not only strengthened its defense against external threats, but also boosted infrastructure, the economy, investment, and jobs, especially in projects connected to military bases and strategic facilities. In 1946, under the administration of Harry Truman, the United States officially offered to buy Greenland from Denmark for about $100 million in gold, an amount that would be equivalent to over $1 billion today. This offer was not merely a political whim, and certainly not a strange economic idea. It was a primary level of strategic necessity and military need born out of the immediate context of the Fourth World Period and the beginning of the Cold War. Even then and up to now, Greenland remains a key piece in controlling the North Atlantic and Arctic, and an important line of defense for America against threats from the North, particularly from the broader Eurasian space. In this context, the strategic argument being revived now by the President of America is nothing new. This continues the long-standing logic of United States geopolitics, a perspective over a century old. Denmark repeatedly refused Harry S. Truman's offer, insisting Greenland was not for sale. But the issue did not end there. The United States did not stop gradually applying pressure. On one hand, Washington agreed to completely withdraw the forces and military facilities that were built during World War II. In 1951, it won a major victory, a defense agreement granting the United States broad authority for military operations in Greenland. This sparked major controversy in Denmark, especially since the agreement was almost unilaterally signed by the Danish ambassador to the United States, Henry Kaufmann, without giving the Danish government enough time to respond or object. The United States acted quickly, immediately starting the construction of Thule Air Base, now known as Pitufik Space Base, one of the most important and sensitive facilities in the entire American defense system. From here, the Arctic airspace is monitored, ballistic missiles are detected, and one of the most critical air routes between Russia and North America is watched. Although Washington officially failed to purchase Greenland, in practice it achieved a large part of its strategic objective. During the Cold War, Greenland functioned like a giant immobile aircraft carrier, an advanced platform for power projection, Arctic surveillance, and the early defense of North America. There were dozens of military installations operated by the United States on the island, including air bases, radar stations, and early warning centers connected to the continental defense system. Intense military experiments were also carried out there. This includes the construction of facilities under Yeltsin, as well as the study of the possibility of placing nuclear missiles under the glacier, using the natural ice cover as protection. All of these strengthened Greenland as one of the most sensitive, yet not openly visible, strategic nodes of the United States. Despite this, during those decades, Greenland remained a colony of Denmark, while the island's external security was almost entirely in the hands of the United States. However, in 1979, after a referendum was approved the previous year, Greenland gained its own government with control over internal affairs. Although Denmark retained control over foreign policy and some economic matters, the Greenlandic government gained authority over most internal affairs, including education, health, the local economy, and taxation. This is an important point because it is one of the central issues in the current debate about Greenland's future. But for now, let's go back to the broader context. After the Soviet Union dissolved in December 1991, United States' strategic interest in Greenland dropped, at least for a while. After a rival superpower disappeared, many of America's military bases on the island were closed or reduced. Some radar systems were partly dismantled, and Greenland's role in Washington's global strategy appeared to decline. Denmark remained the main authority, but in 2009, a new law granted even greater powers to the local government. Most importantly, Greenland's right to self-determination was recognized. In practical terms, this means that if the people wish in the future, Greenland can choose the path toward full independence. Although Denmark retained control over defense and foreign affairs, Greenland was given greater autonomy in managing its natural resources and economic development. Despite this, the local economy continues to rely heavily on fishing and subsidies from Denmark. This is where a key factor comes in. Not geopolitical, but environmental. Because of global warming, especially in recent decades, the melting of ice in the Arctic has been accelerating rapidly. Under the ground of Greenland, large reserves of valuable minerals have been discovered, including rare earth elements, uranium, iron, and even potential reserves of oil and natural gas. Certain resources are essential for the modern economy, particularly in technology and the military. As the Arctic becomes more accessible, it is gradually turning into a new arena for major power competition. A silent but extremely dangerous struggle for influence, resources, and control. Meanwhile, Russia has maintained a strong, ongoing military presence in the north. Old Soviet bases that had long been abandoned were reopened, and new naval and air capabilities were deployed. China, though not an Arctic nation, launched the Polar Silk Road project to access sea routes, resources, and establish a scientific presence in the region. This is real and happening. Greenland is once again becoming central to global geopolitics, sparking renewed and stronger United States interest in the island. Now, Greenland is no longer just an advanced military post from the Cold War. It has become a piece with three fundamental dimensions for the United States government: the defense of the American continent, control over new sea routes in the Arctic, and access to strategic resources in an increasingly competitive world alongside China, Russia, and other powers. It's important to remember that the reason why Donald Trump was desperate to acquire Greenland is not just one, but many, and we will go through them one by one. The first is the defense of the American continent. As we mentioned, Greenland's geographical location is extremely important. This is the closest point between North America and Russia through the Arctic, and this is not a minor detail. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, strategic bombers, and especially hypersonic systems pass through polar trajectories. In fact, the shortest route between Moscow and Washington passes directly over Greenland's airspace. Because of this, Greenland is a key part of America's defensive shield. The United States uses early warning radars at the P-2F space base to detect ballistic missile launches, track space objects, and monitor Arctic air traffic. In a nuclear or strategic conflict, these few minutes of warning could mean everything, and the difference between an effective response and an irreversible disaster. Greenland also plays a key role in North American Aerospace Defense Command, the Joint United States-Canada Aerospace Defense Command. Without effective coverage in the Arctic, North America's air defense will remain incomplete, a scenario the United States can't risk, especially after the American president's announcement about the Golden Dome, an ambitious defense system designed to protect American territory against intercontinental ballistic missiles. Because of this, the American president repeatedly stated that national security is the sole reason the United States wants Greenland. For the American government, allowing another actor, even an ally like Denmark, to control such a critical part of America's defensive shield is a risk they do not want and are not willing to accept in Washington. But don't be mistaken, this is not the only reason why the United States wants Greenland. The second reason is control over new and old sea routes. One of the main factors why Greenland is so important to America's strategy is the new sea routes in the Arctic. For many centuries, these oceans were hardly used because they were covered in thick ice. So it was impossible for trade and large-scale naval operations. But now every year the window of opportunity is getting longer. The ice is melting. And gradually, maritime corridors that were once unimaginable are opening up. These routes in the Arctic promise to significantly reduce the time and cost of shipping and trade between North America, Europe, and Asia. The goods that once had to pass through canals or go around Africa can now pass through the Arctic, which in the future will shorten the journey by thousands of kilometers. Because of this, controlling these routes means a clear advantage: logistical, military, and of course, economic. Greenland remains key to a long-standing but vital route. The Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom gap is the maritime corridor connecting Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. During the Cold War, this route was crucial for detecting and intercepting Soviet submarines trying to enter the Atlantic. The Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom gap's importance has returned because of rising Russian naval activity in the Arctic and North Atlantic. And as mentioned earlier, both Russia and China are strengthening their positions. For the United States, controlling the Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom gap is a powerful means of power projection, an ability to monitor, influence, and if necessary, prevent any movement from the Arctic Ocean and North Seas to the Atlantic. whether it be submarines, warships, tankers, or aircraft carriers. From this perspective, Greenland serves as a strategic gateway. Whoever effectively controls the island has the ability to monitor, intervene, and set boundaries on the movement of traffic in the North Atlantic and Arctic. Third, strategic resources, and here is one of the hottest and most often misunderstood issues today: strategic natural resources. In the past, Greenland was seen as a cold, remote, and resource-poor territory. However, due to the melting of ice, it is gradually being revealed that it holds some of the largest reserves of critical minerals outside of China. Beneath its ground can be found rare earth elements, uranium, iron, zinc, and other important minerals that are essential to the modern economy. These are indispensable in the production of batteries, semiconductors, advanced weapon systems, missiles, satellites, electric vehicles, and technologies related to artificial intelligence. Currently, China dominates a large part of the global supply chain of rare earth elements and their processing. This is a serious strategic vulnerability for the United States and its allies. From this perspective, Greenland emerges as a unique opportunity to reduce dependence on Beijing. And it doesn't end there. Geological studies also suggest the possible presence of oil and natural gas reserves on Greenland's continental shelf, a possible game changer for future energy and geopolitics. However, in 2021, the local government of Greenland suspended new hydrocarbon explorations due to environmental concerns and lack of economic viability. From the perspective of the United States, Denmark's actions are not enough to secure and take advantage of these strategic resources. Even if Denmark does everything Washington asks, they still depend on other countries. It's better to rely on an ally like Denmark than a rival like China. But nothing beats having your own control, right? But don't be fooled. Not everything shiny is valuable. Many analyses say that the supposed mineral wealth of Greenland may be exaggerated, especially when you consider the harsh conditions of the territory. The ground stays frozen nearly all year, making it very hard to dig or build strong facilities. Add the long winter that lasts months, bringing darkness, freezing temperatures, and an environment that nearly always needs artificial lighting. Not only does this lower productivity, it also increases the risk. Workplace accidents become more likely, and the severe winter further raises operational costs. Metals become more brittle. Structural failures and equipment breakdowns happen more often, so special and reinforced materials are needed, which further increases the cost of the project. The main challenge is logistical isolation. Greenland has almost no intercity road or rail network, so everything from equipment to personnel has to be transported by airplane, helicopter, or ship. Travel season is short and costs are very high. A clear example is the Citronen, George Singh, and Lid deposit, located about 2,100 kilometers from Nuuk. In this part of the remote Arctic, there are only about 3 months each year to transport all the necessary materials for year-round operations. Because of this, any mining project becomes a high-risk gamble, both financially and operationally, and this is where the issue of local government comes in. Greenland is a self-governing territory with small, sensitive populations when it comes to external economic influence. For the United States, offering investment, infrastructure, jobs, and subsidies can be a way to gain influence even without formal annexation. For Denmark and Europe, this is the biggest concern: a gradual but continuous economic and political absorption that will eventually weaken their authority over the island. Whatever the main reason may be, the President of America has consistently insisted on acquiring Greenland since his first term as president. In 2019, Donald Trump proposed to buy Greenland as if it were just a simple real estate deal. And as we've seen, this is not the first time the United States has tried to buy the island. However, the way Trump publicly announced it and his continued pressure on Denmark made the situation worse. Denmark responded quickly and firmly. Their prime minister called the proposal absurd and insisted that Greenland is not for sale. This is when tensions between the two countries began to rise. In response, Trump canceled an official visit to Copenhagen and quietly strengthened the United States' political and economic presence on the island. Washington reopened its consulate in Nuuk, a move that hadn't been done in decades, and began allocating funds directly to local projects that bypassed the authority of Denmark. However, in Trump's second term, the tone became more aggressive and direct. In recent months, he no longer just said that the United States needs Greenland. He implied Denmark failed to defend the island properly, saying only the United States can guarantee Greenland's security against Russia and China. It even reached the point where he openly refused to set aside the possibility of using force. This is a level of tension almost unmatched among allies within NATO. On January 13, 2026, a senior advisor to President Trump stated that a United States action in Greenland could happen within just a few weeks or months. According to RT Commissioner Thomas Dunn, the plan is progressing quickly. He described it as a transit route with several stops. However, it is up to President Trump to run it at high speed. He added that the objective will not fail, because various options are already under review, from diplomatic and economic to coercive measures. As for the possible use of force, Thomas Dunn said that those living in ignorance should be concerned about the invasion of Greenland. You can't invade a place if you're already there. At this point, it's very clear that the President of America has secured Greenland, and we've already explained why. But the most important question remains. What will happen next, and what will he do to acquire the island? In early 2026, the President of America declared that his administration was considering various options to acquire Greenland. And most concerning, the most talked about, is the possibility of a military option. Not only did he not take it off the table, but he even compared Greenland's situation to Venezuela. And we already know how those kinds of statements usually end. Nevertheless, to be realistic, a United States military operation in Greenland is highly unlikely. Unlike Venezuela or the Middle East, the narrative would never favor Washington. Invading the territory of a democratic European country and ally for its own geopolitical interests would look extremely bad and would have a heavy negative impact on global opinion. Some may say that Trump doesn't care about this, but in reality, the White House knows the gravity of such a move. An airstrike against Iran or action against Maduro may be controversial, but opinions are divided, and there is room to shape public perception. In the case of Greenland, that's very difficult to do, although not entirely impossible. Second, this is a sensitive issue for NATO and the European Union. Even the Prime Minister of Denmark was very clear. A United States attack on Greenland would mean the end of NATO as we know it, because this would destroy the fundamental principle of collective defense and the trust between allies. And this is not just the opinion of Denmark. Many countries in Europe openly oppose the United States' pressure regarding Greenland, including France, Germany, Italy, Holland, Spain, and the United Kingdom. This shows that any aggressive move will open a deep crisis within the alliances that themselves uphold Western security. Moving towards a military intervention will almost certainly lead to the fragmentation of the main bloc of United States allies. Some claim the United States doesn't need allies, a view Donald Trump has suggested several times. However, the truth is that America's global military projection depends on its bases in those very countries. If the United States attacks an ally, trust will naturally be erased. This may not immediately lead to a declaration of war to defend Denmark. Losing access to bases and strategic positions would be disastrous for Washington. Avoiding the military path leaves political options. First, as noted, bypassing Denmark's authority and dealing directly with Greenland's local government, a step the United States is already taking. It can also support Greenland's independence to exclude Denmark, a tactic major powers have long used. An obstacle is the January 2025 survey, where 85% of Greenland's population opposed leaving Denmark if it meant closer United States ties. Ultimately, the most realistic outcome is a cooperation agreement between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States. In the end, the most likely and realistic scenario is for Washington to have greater influence and power in decision-making regarding the island. Similar to events in 1951 after World War II and at the height of the Cold War, many experts believe this is Donald Trump's real ultimate goal. In any case, if we consider the geopolitical moves of the United States in 2026 and the chaotic state of the world today, no option should be ruled out. If this year has taught us anything, it's that anything can happen. And while it may seem unlikely, a conflict in the Arctic is not impossible.